Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. It's a pleasure to have you back. This is episode number 249, entitled U is for Undo. It was published on Thursday, the 30th of September 2021. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and I'll be joined in just a few moments by my good friend David Wormsley so that we can chat about a WordPress-specific topic, in this case, undoing our mistakes. But before that, just one little bit of housekeeping. The Page Builder Summit is coming around again. It's version 3.0, meaning it's the third version of the summit. If you came to the first two, or either of the first two summits, I'm sure you'll agree they were absolutely exceptional events, and so we decided to run it again. The dates this year, well, it's running from the 18th of October 2021 all the way through to the 22nd of October. So that's 5 days. We've got a load of speakers lined up. And it's going to be a really nice event. There's not just speakers, there's also things to take part in our Facebook group, bingo, games. We're doing a bit of co-working and all of that nice stuff as well. And the best way that you're going to sign up for all of that is to head over to pagebuildersummit.com and sign up with your email address. That's all we ask, just for your email address, and then we will let you know as and when the event rolls around. That's pagebuildersummit.com. Go there and fill out the form and click the little button to subscribe, and we'll get back to you. Honestly, it's going to be a really good event. I would recommend scrolling on that page and having a look and seeing who the speakers are. Speaking of the Page Builder Summit, if you're interested in sponsoring that event, please reach out to me, admin@wpbuilds.com, and I will hook you up with information about sponsoring. It's going to be a really nice event, lots of WordPress specific people hanging out for a full week, and it may very well be that your company, product or service could benefit from being associated with this lovely event. Okay, that's all I've got to say this week. And so let's move on to talking about this week's episode. It's called U is for Undo, and we're doing our regular A to Z of WordPress. We're getting quite close to the end. We're on the letter U, and we decided to go for undo. This is an episode where we try to figure out all of the things that can go wrong, which we wish never happened, which we wish we could undo. And there's absolutely boatloads, more than you might expect. Lots of problems. It's the kind of episode the content you really don't want to hear because you don't want to know about these things, but important to know when things go wrong, how you might be able to fix them. I hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, it's another A to Z of WordPress, the series where we attempt to cover all the major aspects of building and maintaining sites with WordPress. Today, it's U for Undo.
This is such a curious one because we don't have any kind of real undoiness, really. It feels like a computer term, doesn't it? Or a Word document term or something like that. But there's loads. You came up with a boatload of stuff in our show notes for this, so that let's get stuck in.
Yeah, I guess we're just talking about the kind of mistakes and pickles that we can get into and how we can kind of get out of those. The common mistakes, I guess, and things. We learned some stuff just talking earlier, didn't we? Some things that we thought were our common practices were not needed. And
a few little misconceptions along the way, but obviously if you've been working for WordPress for any length of time, you will know that a lot can go wrong. And so it's all about figuring out ways to undo the things that have gone wrong. So it's not about preventing things from going wrong. It's just about backing out once things have already gone wrong.
Exactly that. And there's quite a lot of articles around on stuff, quite scary ones, like the top 50 things that can go wrong with WordPress.
Just the top 50? Wow.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, let's start with our color list. So the good thing is most of, I guess, our audience and we are page builder users. So these days we do at least have an undo there, don't we? Most of the time we can usually just press Control and Z, or if you're on a Mac, you press Command, don't you? And you can go back to your last revision in your page builder, which I think is lovely.
Yes, I'm very familiar with this keystroke and I use it all the time. And actually, it's pretty ubiquitous. There's very few things that I now use where that isn't the way to invoke the previous step, I'm using a Mac, so it's Command Z, and you can just keep doing it. I guess at some point maybe the revision history runs out. And in a page builder, I guess it runs out to the last time you actually confirmed that you wanted things to be published.
Yeah. No, I find it really useful. I mean, I think most of them have got it now. I mean, there's probably some thanks has to go to Elementor. It's not what I use, but I think they were the first I remember who put it in. And I think, now everybody's got it and it's great, I think. Funny enough, I didn't used to have a problem when it wasn't there.
No.
And suddenly,
no.
As soon as I know it's there,
yeah.
I get sloppy.
I would basically click disregard. So the save process in Beaver Builder, there's an option to just sort of back out at that point. So I would be clicking save and publish and then re-enter the page builder quite frequently. So even a few modifications I would then go and publish it right away, whereas I do that far less now that the undo option is there, because I know that I can just undo to a certain point, and it works. It works perfectly as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, exactly. Undo has just made me sloppy. That's all that's happened. I know it's there.
Yeah, good point. But it's amazing that it is there, and obviously if you haven't been using a page builder, you may not know that function exists. I imagine whatever page builder is the one that you have as your page builder of choice, there's probably an option. Probably it's Command or Control Z.
Yeah. And I think the stuff that goes wrong, I mean, certainly, again, I've got a page builder group, so Beaver builder group, and the thing that must come up the most has to be changes not showing. They're always saying, published, it's not there, blah, blah. And it's nearly always a caching issue of some kind.
Yes.
But, oh, boy.
Yeah. I think this is probably the single biggest thing that can be annoying with a page builder, is that simply the caching seems to get in the way, and the things that you assumed would save perfectly, because, it should, they just don't.
I know, and it's just, I think the worst thing now, for people who are new with it, I think browser caching trips them up the most. So, again, Control F5 usually sorts it out, or just if you're really uncertain, going into incognito or private mode sorts that out. And usually that's enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we were just talking, weren't we, about there is something which I don't think many people know, and I don't know how effective it is, but if you're, say, using the Chrome browser, and I'm sure it's true with others, if you go into Inspect and go to Network, there's a little checkbox for Disable Cache, which I try and leave on when I'm doing work.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was there, to be perfectly honest. You had to show me where it was.
Yeah, well, I don't know how effective it is, because I still, on certain sites, get the same browser caching issue. So, it's kind of... I almost don't think about it now, so I'm regularly on the kind of Control and F5, just to make sure that what I'm seeing. But it does extend beyond that, doesn't it? I mean, it goes into the whole... If somebody comes with that issue, you end up sort of trying to isolate whether they might have something on their server that's doing some caching that they don't know about. Because we've got Varnish and things like that are working on servers, and then we've got CDNs are another issue when people don't even know that they've got a CDN on their hosting.
And the problem about all of this stuff is it's all impenetrable, and you might be having to log in some third-party platform like Cloudflare or something in order to purge the cache over there, and suddenly it doesn't feel like your website is under your control anymore. So this can be really, really, really frustrating.
Yeah, Cloudflare have that rocket mode, which is, I think, quite dangerous for most page builders. It just kind of, it's a really ultra caching that you certainly can't use it with Beaver Builder. I know that much. So
Yep.
But yeah, that's probably got to be the one that comes up the most. The next one that I put down here, you said it's never been an issue for you, and that's losing styling when you changing your theme, or whether you we'll talk about that later, whether you decide to realize that you need to add in a child theme that you've forgotten about before.
I think this is more because I don't often change the theme than maybe if I was changing theme frequently and often, this would be something that's occurring to me, but I well understand how this could be the case. But you've had this a lot, because I thought you were a kind of Beaver Builder theme user over the last period, but I know you went from Genesis at some point, so presumably things had to move over at that point, and styles got changed, and fonts looked different.
Yeah, I've had to do it a couple of times. It's a rebuild on that one. I think really what I was trying to probably get at is often when you're just changing kind of usually the child to adding the child theme in, and then you lose everything. So you set everything up on a parent child. It's put that in the database. You put in a child. It's considered as a new entry, isn't it? A new theme changeover. Yep. And then you suddenly break things immediately with that one. But there is a nice plugin which kind of helps with that one. I mean, this probably will go in the future of WordPress if the full site editing comes in, but there's a customizer export import plugin which will allow you to save those settings, which isn't there by default in WordPress. So
have you used that?
Those. Yeah.
And it's been a sort of panacea for that problem, has it?
Yeah, I mean, it's often I've started things, and I mean, I don't these days. The starter site is usually what I start with, and it's got the child theme with all of my stuff in it. But yeah, a few times I've done that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
But I think that's a common one for people starting up anyway. Just the fact that they don't know there's a child theme is needed. I think it's a difficult thing to communicate that someone may need that.
Yeah, it's kind of not. It's not intuitive, that one, is it? Because you go to the theme repository or download your theme, and there it is. You've got your theme. You enabled it, and look, everything looks exactly as it should do. But obviously, if you're going to modify things, it's best to have those modifications elsewhere. But yeah, it's a quirk, that one, isn't it? It would be good if that could be, I guess, re-architected. But that's the legacy we've got.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, when I started with WordPress, I don't think anybody really thought about it. You just didn't. I guess most people didn't expect that there'd be modifying their themes in quite the way that we ended up doing, later. So
that's a good point.
There. And and it's surprising, isn't it, that the repository doesn't automatically do that? So it installs you a child theme as a standard practice. Yeah.
Okay. Next up.
Emails.
Emails not sending. Ooh.
Yeah. Gosh, how many times do people talk about this one? Well, anyway, we've got a solution, haven't we, which we both like, which is Fluent, SMPT, which is SMTP. I always get that the wrong way around.
No, I've heard you say that the wrong way around a few times, but I never comment, and you picked it up yourself. It's Simple Mail Transport Protocol, I think.
Yes. I'm sure there was something that used to click music to video that was called SMPT. Maybe that was TP.
Oh, yeah, no, that's SMPT, where it would try to align your audio with the video. Yeah, SMPT. But I guess they say SMPT as a short way of the acronym. Anyway, we're totally going off message here, aren't we?
That's where it comes from. That's why I swap it round, because I knew SMPT first.
Yeah. The reason I like this plugin is it's a fairly new one. It's totally free on the repository, and the reason that I've switched over to it is it has all the options that I need. You can use Google or any other service you like, including just regular old SMTP connections. And it's got this nice feature where you can resend unsuccessfully sent emails. But you found one which I think's got a really nice feature. You've got a different one.
No, actually it's the Fluent that's got the feature that I think is really cool. It's only just come in. I asked them about it, and it's the fact that you can line up. So I use Mailgun as my service, and apparently what this has got a fallback system. So if Mailgun fails to deliver, the Fluent SMPT will then go to the next one that I've assigned, say that's Sendinblue or whatever as a service, or just using my own mail address to serve it. So it defaults that. I don't think there's anyone who's doing that, and I'm not using that at the moment. For simplicity, I'm using Mailgun's own system for that, and then another plugin which is called Mail Catcher to just capture mail, so if something does go wrong, at least we've got some record of what was submitted.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. I thought Mail Catcher was the one that had got this new feature. So the idea here is that Fluent SMTP will, if it fails to deliver off its primary service, it will then go back and try again with a different service. That's cool.
I hope I got this right.
Yeah,
but I
shocking
think
you
that's
were
their main. I think that's the main thing. So I wasn't going for the Fluent one because it just did more than I needed, and this mail catcher was like a few kilobytes or something to do its job. So I thought, well, I won't install this one, but now I might just switch over to this Fluent SMTP, going to get it right, in future because of this one feature where you can assign some kind of backup. Because you wouldn't know, would you, otherwise?
No.
If your send service is failing, you have to go into your install to find out whether it caught some mail that wasn't there.
And it is a good idea if you are going
to
to be putting contact forms and what have you in on a website, not to just use the host PHP mailer or something. Use a different service because you don't want everything hitting spam.
Yeah, and I think it seems to be the case when people say stop sending, that usually is the thing that I see, and it's usually because it has been set up on the server, and then at some point the hosting service has decided to disable it.
Yeah.
Which is quite common. I think it's usually because they're trying to optimize their servers.
Yeah.
So
okay, moving on. Every time you update your WordPress plugins and themes and what have you, there's a little file created temporarily, a maintenance file, and then it gets deleted when everything has successfully updated itself. But during the period of time that maintenance file exists, you have a little message on the front end of the website, which obviously if that file doesn't get erased for one reason or another, your website's totally inaccessible. I've never had this. I've only noticed it in the moment where websites are actually being updated and their plugins and themes and what have you are, but I've never had it not erase itself.
Do you know, I think this must be a hosting thing, because you've always had good hosting, and over recent years, since I've been doing it kind of professionally, I've always had good hosting and never had it. But I used to have it quite frequently before when I was on shared hosting. So I guess it is with that when you,
I
you're
wonder
likely to see
what it is there. Just some sort of trigger that never got fired to go out and delete that file. I mean, the nice thing is if you've got FTP access, all you need to do is log in and find the maintenance file.
Yeah,
and
it's in your root as well, so it's easy to find. So I wonder if there's a lot of plugins, that coming soon plugins that will have a maintenance mode as well.
Yeah.
If you set that, I wonder if that removes that. Have you ever done that?
No.
No. Should do, shouldn't we? Really, it's an ugly experience to get the default WordPress.
Yeah, it's very plain. I mean, it's a I don't know, greyish background with one little box with one sentence in it saying something like this website is in maintenance mode. So you're advocating for having a pretty maintenance mode page, are you?
Well, no, I haven't done it. I think it just made me ask the question. Really, I suppose I should, because I mean, I try and do the maintenance, the updates when people aren't likely to be visiting the sites, but still, I guess it would be a nice thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. I mean, I guess it's a bit like the 404 page. It's quite nice to have, but possibly not necessary. I don't know. I guess most websites are probably experiencing a minute of this every couple of days or something. Yeah, there's no harm doing it. I don't think I'll be doing it. I'm too lazy.
Yeah, there is that. Is it worth the time, effort?
Yeah.
But maybe it should be a standard. But it's another plugin that you have to install, isn't it? Someone's going to tell me.
I can't remember what the default message for that is, actually. I can't remember how the sentence reads, but maybe there's a way to just update that message to say we will be back in a few seconds. Click refresh in a moment. But I can't remember whether it makes that point. Because obviously sites being in maintenance mode, you might just lose a bunch of people who assume that you're out for the rest of the night or something. Exactly.
You could put at least some basic information about your site and how they can contact you and etc. and that. So I'm going to start thinking about doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. White screen of death is the next one up. Well, there's not much to say about this, is there?
Again, this is a bit apocryphal for me. I just don't have any recollection of getting the white screen. I mean, I think I've created that problem myself, but I've absolutely instantly known that I've missed like a semicolon or something.
Yeah.
I haven't ended a PHP function correctly, and I've just gone, oh, okay, and then I fixed it. But I can't remember it happening without my express cock up.
And we have a recovery mode, which is great now.
Yeah.
We can go and put it in safe mode and change our plugins. So do you get those messages very often?
Again, not
that,
really,
you've got
because
a
not a lot is changing. No.
I well, not that often, but once in a while I get them saying it's usually something like a backup has exhausted my memory and there's a problem going to recover. I never have to recover. I go into recovery mode because the link's there, but I never have to do anything apart from just take it out of recovery mode. But anyway, but then it seems like the white screen of death, which used to be a common complaint with WordPress, is probably covered with the recovery mode.
It's more of a thing in the past. Yeah, you're right. I definitely did get those messages. I've seen those messages coming in the past, but it's not a feature of my life. But it is a really, really, really nice that the recovery mode has been created. I can't remember it. What is it? Probably like a year and a half old, something like that now.
Yeah. I think so. The next one probably want to skip over the login redirect loop. That's a common problem that people have. But again, it's not one for me. I don't have this one. So I have to look up an article to tell me what the problem is and how to fix it.
So is this where you go to the login page and log in, and then you just go to the login page and log in, and you go to the login
exactly.
page? Yeah, so you've found a link, and I'll put it in the show notes to... I don't even remember if that link describes why this problem might have existed in the first place. It gives you 2 or 3 different options for how to possibly mitigate it.
Yeah, well, some of it could be browser caching. That's one of the things that that you're not seeing something that isn't there, that you haven't seen it from somewhere else, and then it's usually about restoring the HT access file, isn't it? There might be some issues there. And there are plugins, of course, that mess around with that file. So, it is possible that an issue could be created. But then they go into all of this. Basically, it goes the easiest option, check it isn't your browser giving you wrong information, which it can be.
Yeah.
Have you ever found that experience? So when I have seen it, and then, you think you haven't solved your problem, but it's your browser caching, you go into incognito mode and the problem no longer exists. So, that article does that. And then it starts to get into, looking into your database for issues there. So I think we'll skip over that one because it gets too complex. But
yes, I have had that, and I've usually solved it by going to another browser and then realised, okay, the website is working perfectly. It is my problem. I need to get this working because it's this browser that has the problem logging in. It's not. It's not that the website nobody can log in. It's just this particular browser of mine.
Exactly. And the other one, again, this one comes up. I see in the groups all the time, fatal error. And it's usually that fatal error is a memory, not having enough memory, not defining enough RAM.
Yeah.
Or bad hosting.
I honestly, you had to tell me what you thought the right number for the allocation of RAM was. And the minimum you go for, I think, was 256, something like that. That seems to be about the right area nowadays.
And to be honest, I've never known, and I've gone for 512 most of the time now, just allowing enough room because I trust my servers to be able to honor it. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's another definition that you can place into your WP config file to set it, but then that doesn't guarantee you're going to have enough RAM in your server to honor it, really. So when I'm sticking, as you pointed out before, often I'll be cramming a bunch of small sites on 1 GB RAM hosting, but giving them all, half of that RAM.
Yeah.
So it doesn't kind of add up, does it, if it's needed? But that's my thinking. I would love to hear if that's the wrong... I just think, allow this site to have the RAM it needs.
Yes. Yeah, give it the maximum number possible and hope for the best.
Yeah, it's worked out so far. But I think that's a problem. And I think particularly with page builders becoming so popular, they demand more RAM, don't they, in the back end? And that's where people run into issues with kind of budget shared hosting.
I think often the plugins that I've used that know already for themselves that they're going to be RAM intensive. So I'm thinking of things like main WP. They've often got some kind of visual run through at the beginning whilst you're setting the whole website up for the first time and you're getting that plugin all installed and you're working out the settings, and they tell you, really, this isn't going to work unless you somehow figure out how to increase the RAM available. So in the case of main WP,
Yes.
it links to tutorials explaining how to do this, and yeah, but that's a pretty unique case. But you're right, page builders. I imagine that's a fairly common thing appearing in support. I've got cheap hosting. Why isn't my page builder working? Okay, try this. Go and fiddle with your your config file or something.
But it's something that's really moved, isn't it, in WordPress? I mean, the early requirements for WordPress, what they would expect you'd be setting something like that, was much lower. And now, as we've got bigger plugins doing so much more, I mean, there's a trend, isn't there, to, page builders obviously do that. They become full site builders. They're including the sort of stuff that we would have expected plugins to do before. But now plugins generally do a lot more than we actually need them to do, so they become quite intensive as well.
Yeah, but there's also kind of an expectation, I would have imagined, from non-technical end users, so people who are just using WordPress and they've decided they want to do the .org version, so they've downloaded it, got some hosting, and they're up and running. It may be they simply don't understand that piling in a load of plugins is going to be consuming a load of resources, and like you say, a few of them, page builders in particular, they are really consuming a lot of resources, and despite the fact that you're paying $6 a month to a hosting company, that $6 a month might not cut it. You might not get the resources that you want for that figure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't have a clue when I went in there. It's just a sweet shop, isn't it? All these plugins. Woo!
Yeah, add them all in, it'll be fine. And honestly, mostly I'm sure it will be. But when it grinds to a halt, that might be the reason.
Yep. 404s on your pages. So refreshing permalinks. This is something that I often have to tell people to do.
Yeah, and curiously, we're not entirely sure what the correct procedure is here. My thought was that if you went to settings, permalinks, that was all you needed to do. You didn't need to click save. But if you're changing the permalink structure, in other words, if you're going from, I don't know, post name to something with a date in front of it, so the date followed by the post name, then you would need to click save. But I think just actually visiting the permalinks page will clear the cache of that, and you need to, and it'll refresh it all.
Well, it refreshes it in the day, and I didn't know that. I always thought, because I think I read it a long time ago, that you go into the permalinks page and then you just click without changing any of the settings, the save. That's what I was told, so that's what I've done.
Well, either way,
but
because you visited the page.
Exactly. I didn't know there was one extra step. Yeah. Just think at the time I will save.
Oh, imagine the whole seconds you could have saved in your life if you'd have only known that was the case.
Just one duff article.
But yeah, if you're getting 404s, go to settings, permalinks, and see if that works as a first port of call.
And there's a related issue which came up with a friend of mine, was what seems to happen with posts. Now, again, I could be wrong, but it seems to have happened twice to me, is that if you're setting up your blog post and you don't have a subdirectory of blog before you come to the name of that particular article, it's going to be very similar to pages, isn't it? It's the title of the page.
So this is if you've got the permalink set to post name.
Yes. So what's happened a couple of times is that recently, in fact, one of the clients, they wrote an article on their blog post. You went to it and it took you to the page because it was the same URL as a page that had earlier been constructed, because I guess posts are separate custom post types, if you like, to the pages. And instead of doing what posts would normally do, if you did it with the same title, it would add a 2 to it, so you would end up not doing that. It doesn't happen between pages and posts, so that's an interesting one. That's just a personal one. I don't think, other than it happening to me twice, I don't think I've heard anybody speak of that.
No, but that would be properly mystifying though as well, wouldn't it? Because you'd have so let's say you've got example.com / I don't know, big post, and then you go to, and that's a page, and then you go and create a post called example.com big post. The second one that you created, whether that was the post or the page, will be unavailable to you on the front end.
Yeah.
You'll be able to edit in the back end, but you'll go to save it and it won't exist. So I guess you either change the post title and then the slug, so that you've got a new slug, but that would be totally mesmerizing why that doesn't work. That would impenetrable for a non-experienced user. Be like, well, I've saved it, it's there, I can see it, it's published, it says it's published. Okay, yeah. No, I've definitely had that. And that takes a little bit of figuring out how WordPress works in terms of the constructions of its own URLs and so on.
Okay, hacked sites. That's got to be the mother of all undos, isn't it?
Yeah, this is why you have the backups. That is the big undo, isn't it? The backup. Use the backup.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hacked sites, we have a slight disagreement because you rightfully point out when we were talking before that it's getting so complex that you really can't do it yourself because hackers are getting really sophisticated on how they bury their code. But I'm the other way where I think, well, I've had successes all the time when I've done that just by running a scan with WordFence on its highest setting, so it does give you false positives and just chucking away stuff that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to somebody on the This Week in WordPress show called Tim Nash, and we were talking through I believe it even was a WordFence post about how there's this, well, it's not really a new wave, but the hackers are getting really good at hiding their hacks to look very, very similar to just regular old code, as opposed to in the olden days where there'd just be a load of obfuscated stuff. Now you get things which just look like regular functions and very complicated. My point on this is that I guess if I could go out and find some articles basically saying, look, this hack was really easy to fix, go to this file, you'll notice this, then you can just delete that and you're done, or something equivalent to that, that's fine. But my fear with the complexity now is that I would clear out what I could find for myself, the obvious stuff, and then I might take that back to the client and say, okay, yeah, I think we're good, and then only to find 2 weeks later it's back and you've got sort of egg all over your face. That's the problem, I think.
Yeah, no, I can understand that, and I think if I clear something, it's I've got to say it's with the understanding that I don't know what I'm doing. I can just make my best guess on clearing stuff up here, and the sites I've had to clear up have been clients that we've built the site and they've gone off and hosted it themselves and they've not updated their plugins. So it's been fairly easy, I think, but again, it's guesswork to guess where their hack came in because they've got a site with a known vulnerability that's been made public. So they were sitting ducks from that moment. And if they've got a backup and they haven't changed their site since that point, then I think it's pretty safe to be able to put that backup in and then update the plugin, and it's probably going to be okay. So I've done that once. Most of the time they've changed something, so I've had to clear up with WordFence, but it's worked every time. I mean, I must have done 6 or 7. I'm not entirely sure over my time, but every single one of those has not had the issue come back. So
yeah. This is scary territory, though, isn't it? This is an area that you just pray is never going to happen to you. But, yeah, my point now would be just I'm going to let a total certified pro deal with this if I run into it, because if it's a quick fix, it won't take them long anyway, and if it's a more in-depth fix, then that's the sort of stuff I wouldn't have been able to do. So it's time saved, really.
Yeah. And you wanted to just mention servers, didn't you, as well?
Oh, yeah, just really things like, Nginx collapsing or something like that, an aspect of your server that just breaks. And it must have happened to all of us at some point. If you were an OVH user, I think it was probably about a year ago, they had a fire in one of their data centers. And so everybody who had a website on that hardware was going through some sort of period of downtime, and you'd have been trying to log in and there'd have been nothing coming up, and you would have been thinking, what's going on? And there's nothing you can do about this. You just have to hope that they'll they'll figure out a way around that problem that doesn't involve rebuilding computers. It just involves activating a different data center with your website on it. But yeah, things going down. There was a host recently, wasn't there? We talked about it in the WordPress news not that long ago that went down as a result of a hack, and they lost everything. And they had to write to a lot of their customers and say, we've lost your website, but also we've lost all the backups. So sorry about that. But yeah, you're just going to have to start again. I think it was Web Hosting Canada or Canada Web Hosting or something like that.
Gosh, can you imagine? I've heard these stories with other hosts, and I mean, we're moving on to good practice now, aren't we? And I think, absolutely having a backup on some kind of third-party server, or at least on your own computer, somewhere independent to your host, is the ultimate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Undo.
I think you are negligent if you aren't backing up. At least, if your hosting provider allows you to have a backup over there, great, use that. But also, with the wealth of free plugins on the WordPress repository that can back up to a free tier of something like Google Drive or Dropbox, you can get enough space to back up your website possibly dozens of times for completely no money at all. It just doesn't make sense not to have some backups. And of course, the big one, which I'm guilty of this as much as anybody else, is just try the backups as well, just to make sure that they actually work. Because whilst that's never bitten me yet, there are certain, I've probably forgotten to check a backup, and I'm still in a situation where I haven't checked those backups, and I'm just I'm on a bit of a wing and a prayer, really.
Yeah, that's what I feel when it's really difficult to get some independent advice on what's a good backup plugin for you, because so many are going to depend on the hosting environment, and most people, it's kind of like buying your insurance, isn't it? You don't know how good it is until you need it.
That's right.
And so yeah, okay, good practice thing. So an obvious thing, I guess, is just checking the hosting requirements, which are there on the WordPress.org site, so you can find out what kind of server power that you need, what type of database you're going to require, and probably, I know from experience, avoid using kind of a Windows server, really, because you can, but it's a lot of extra work.
Yeah, I think you are going to end up doing a whole boatload of extra things because it's just not typical. The typical thing to do is to use some sort of Linux distribution, and because that's the typical thing, there's loads of people who have an answer to all that.
And another one that's often forgotten about, not least by me, is that we've got default WordPress revisions anyway, so we can, unless we've changed it to delete those, we've usually got past history, and we can just go back on our posts and pages.
I never really make much use of this. It's very rare that I personally make use of it, but it's a really, really great feature.
Yeah. I didn't mention it here, did I? About the confusion I had over WP revisions with a friend of mine, a client, really, who used to be the person I worked with. She couldn't. I said, just go back to revisions. You can get stuff back, and she was like, "But it's not." And what she'd done, and I'd never seen this before, that she was swapping from the inputting the content in the page builder and then inputting it from the back end in the post itself, and that completely confused revisions.
Oh, so what? So she was using a page builder, and then she was saving that away, and then she'd go in and click edit page, which of course doesn't get you to the page builder. Then she would just overwrite all of that with the body copy that she wanted, and then click save, and then wonder why everything looked different. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was sort of swapping from one to the other. So suddenly so you're fine with WP revisions as long as you stick with it. So if you're using the page builder, it's going to restore all of the stuff there. But if you start swapping from one to the other, as she did, then it was really confusing. Because what often the page builder does separately is it does its own revisions, doesn't it, of what it puts in. So it stores that independently to the WordPress revisions. So you go in and you save again. You go into your page builder, suddenly all the stuff that wasn't there in the back end suddenly reappears again. So Yeah, we got really lost with her revisions, how all of this stuff disappeared and came back as she swapped from it. Never seen it before. It was only recently. But
and do you expunge your revisions periodically? If you're building a client website, do you set it up so that it keeps the latest 15 or 20 or something like that?
So yeah, I used to define it in my config file to only keep so many, and now that's really kind of pointless now because I've got other things like WP Rocket, which will clear them out at a set time, and also main WP doing it as well. So no, I don't I only do it on a timer now.
So you've got these third-party solutions which do it all as a sort of, they inject that logic in, like main WP. I actually didn't know that was in main WP. That's a setting I've yet to explore. Okay, that's good to know. I'll start doing that. What else have we got? Using a child theme. Yes.
Yeah, we kind of covered that in a way,
we did.
haven't we? That's that's a must. That the more I think about it, the more I think, isn't it crazy that that it isn't automatically installed?
Yeah, so if you get a theme, it comes along with a child theme, because there's very little actually in it. I mean, really, there's nothing inside of a child theme at all, hardly. And having that as the default, almost like it's the theme. Yeah, kind of seems like a sensible default. But I guess I don't know. Yeah, I can see why people technically would want to be able to edit the theme as well as the child theme. But sure enough, it makes life a lot easier if you're going to edit things. Then create a child theme and edit it. And most themes these days will have a child theme of like 1 kilobyte, which you can bring along for the ride.
Yeah, the one that I want to add in here, I don't think it really goes under undo, but still, I just like to talk about this one, which is if you've got plugins, it's worth going into the settings and seeing which ones will allow you to remove the database entries on deletion. Because usually, I think it's good practice that a lot of them allow you to do this one, but usually it's ticked off by default and most people don't know. So recently I was looking at the Omgf font plugin, so you have to go and turn that off if you want it to get rid of your fonts that is loaded for you at the end of it. Otherwise you can kind of store up a lot of stuff if you're experimenting with your site.
Do you think I think it's really atypical that a plugin will delete all of that stuff. I think most plugins, when you deactivate and delete them, don't do anything, and they're just the database swells over time. In many ways, I think that ought to be a kind of mandatory feature with all plugins, and you ought to get told off if you don't do that.
You said it. You came up with a solution. I think it's perfect. More people should listen to this show and implement what you said, which was this opt-out thing. When you delete it, you get, do you want to clear the database? Yeah. I mean, I understand that it's the safest thing for them for support, isn't it? Particularly if you're a page builder. Heck, can you imagine every time someone, had something go wrong with their page builder, losing all of that work? It would be a nightmare, wouldn't it? So I understand it, and certain plugins need it, but there are so many out there. But I just think they're there if you look in the settings, that ability. So WordFence is one we mentioned earlier. It's got that, but you have to turn it on, and that clears up a lot of junk if you want to get rid of WordFence.
Yeah, I think for most plugins, maybe there are certain plugins where the utility is so great that it would be a catastrophe. But the vast majority of the plugins, the default expectation ought to be that if you delete it, it should go. It should go, and it should take everything, every table that it created, every file that was part of the plugin should be removed if you agree to that. So there we go.
Nathan, I've never asked you this. Do you check your console for for errors regularly?
Do you mean if everything's working okay?
On your site, yeah.
No, not really. Yeah. Do you mean just habitually go around and just put the console on and see if there's error? No, only if I notice something's a bit quirky. I'm guessing that you do.
I've started to.
Oh, okay.
It's something that I only look for problems, but I realise it's so common. I mean, recently I realised how important it was, because I was locally loading fonts. I loaded them in my root. I created a custom post type, and I broke the connection to those fonts. I didn't see the issue because browser caching protected me from seeing that. So I went to those pages. There were 404s on my fonts, but for me, all was fine. It was other people who didn't see it.
Right.
So, or people who hadn't, cached it from another page. So if they went directly there. And it's made me realize, and more often I see it, and it's interesting. Only the other day, someone had an issue with their site, and they knew their stuff, but they hadn't checked their console, and they had a 404 on something which was slowing down their pages clearly. So I've started to make this a habit. I know I'm not a developer really, so I don't kind of think to do these, but now it's become sort of a common thing while I'm building sites to constantly be checking that, and often when I just go and visit client sites I've built before, it's become a bit of a habit now.
Yeah, no,
something.
Not something I typically would involve doing, but it is interesting. The rare is the site, I would say, where there isn't some sort of error. There's always going to be something that's going on in there, and I guess you've just got to find the ones that are pertinent to you. I could just So no, I basically don't do that.
I think it's quite handy, particularly often with plugins as well. One of the common warnings that you see with looking at that one is I forget what it stands for, but it's called cause, where you haven't got permission to connect up to on your site, your domain name, to connect up to the thing that they're serving you up. And it's quite interesting. You just don't, these things are all obviously slowing down your page load. So, yeah.
Okay.
Check consoles.
Check consoles. Inspect. There you go. David says check the consoles. We all must go and check the consoles more. I tell you what I do is I've got a decent uptime monitoring service, which I'm quite happy with. I'm pretty much every site. If there's 2 or 3 on the same server, it may be that I'll just check one of them. But typically I'll set up every single site with some kind of uptime monitoring, usually with checking it every 5 minutes, something like that, so that I will get a warning if something is astray. And very happy. You and I have got the same one, and I think both of us agree that it seems to do pretty admirably the thing that it's got to do.
Yeah, it's a peace of mind thing, isn't it? I mean, you don't, it's undo this. So we're talking about preventative stuff, but still, it's important. If you don't know you've got a problem, you don't know what you need to fix.
Yep.
So
yep. The last thing you want is to be phoned up by a client telling you that the site's down. It's better for you to email them to tell them that their site's down. But you're on it. You're going to go and have a look and undo every single thing that went wrong.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that uptime monitoring is really good, because I'm often sort of setting up test sites and deleting and stuff, and they just get that email so quickly telling me that it's not there, and I just think, wow.
Yeah, it really works. I often will get an email from the service that we use whilst the sites are in maintenance mode, and honestly, it's probably like 30 seconds. It must be pure coincidence that their little ping is going out at the exact moment that I clicked update on plugins or themes or what have you. But nevertheless, it's a nice bit of confirmation that actually I'm paid for this and it's doing what it said it would do.
Yeah, and another preventative thing I think is worth doing from almost everybody, unless you use Jetpack, I think, but it's disabling XML. Let me get this right. XML RPC.
Not easy to say. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's the thing that was there for pinging in blog times, and it's still there. And I believe that WordPress is moving towards a React solution for that, but it's not removed because it'll break people's existing sites, so they're stuck with it. But it is, I think, isn't it the number one route for hackers these days?
It seems to be the number one thing that the plugins, iTheme Security and WordFence and all of that, seems to be one of their first boxes to tick is, should we just enable this? Or should we just disable it, should I say? And mostly the default is let's disable it unless you've got a jolly good reason to have it enabled. So, turn that off unless you know that you ought to have it turned on, which is unlikely.
Yeah. And it's just a line that you need to put in your htaccess file, isn't it, to turn it off. So you don't need a plugin. So it's good. Yep, I think we're getting to the end here. We maybe just quickly round up with a few kind of prevention things.
Sure.
I mean, a lot of the problems might be just down to not doing due diligence on plugins and the kind of background of those, the authors behind them, and what's going on there. I think that if anything has kept me mostly trouble free, I think it's been doing that kind of work, checking out where I'm getting my plugins from.
Yeah, you are exceptionally good with all this. You were the first person really that made me sit up and notice that actually finding out about the heritage of the company that you're about to buy a plugin from. And it's not just actually this site just looks a bit dubious. There's something, this site just looks a bit on the cheap side. You kind of go a bit more, don't you, and figure out, see what the author's heritage is, see if they've had any projects which have been an absolute catastrophe before, and so on. And why not? This is a good idea. And now I try to do that. In fact, it's not even that I try to do this. I'm listening to people like you, trusted sources of people who've been out there and played with these things and tried them out, and so it's I'm listening to the wise words from you and other people to let me judge whether or not I should move forward with certain plugins.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing, I think, because some plugins just do a very simple task and they probably don't require much. But just knowing, I mean, they don't have to be. It's kind of just honest people behind the plugins who make sense of why they're doing it. We've had a lot of those cases where the entire plugin's been stripped out and you've got something different. And you kind of know with certain people who make plugins that they're unlikely to do that. So I don't know. It's just thinking that way. I mean, I ignore my own advice very often on this, but I think
you're allowed to ignore your own advice. That's fine.
We've already mentioned backups, haven't we, to a third-party server? That's the biggest preventative thing. And backups, maybe you're big on this, and I'm poor on this. Backup on your local machine. So if you're saving copies of that and copies of any of your other resources that you need for your website, you probably want to back up. You use a service that I used to use.
Yeah, I use SpiderOak, but it's funny because I'm using it via a third-party solution. So I'm backing up to Google Drive, which then backs up to SpiderOak. So I'm still reliant upon some sort of cloud service, but I'm essentially taking that backup and it's sitting on my machine, and then it's backing up to other multiple places. Essentially, I'm getting the backup which I pray is worthy. It will actually restore. And then I'm sending that to multiple locations. So one is on my local machine, one is on a third party, and I think that's a good idea. Yeah. And the last one you've written here is, not overdoing it with lots and lots of plugins, particularly ones that are doing an awful lot of work. So heavy plugins, as you've described.
Yeah, I think that's the trend we have now, plugins to do a lot more, because WordPress is much more commercial than it used to be in the old days, and people need something to add on to add value to it. So it's very easy, isn't it, to go overboard and end up with plugins that are often doing the same task, So
yeah. And honestly, plugins. I think it's totally possible to build a website with almost no plugins. You can do quite a lot these days with very little, and I guess it's about avoiding the temptation. Do you really need this thing? Is that really a plugin that you need, or will your website perform better in Google and therefore be discovered more by people if you keep it lean and fast?
Exactly. I mean, often, you could install a plugin that does a multitude of different things just for what is a line of CSS. So sometimes if you can, find someone who might be able to give you a clue how to do that, it might be the better route rather than just another plugin, because it's just another potential thing that can conflict with existing plugins. Right.
I think we've done it. We've done it. It's quite a long one, actually. We talked for quite a long time there.
Wow.
I will. We had a few little stops and starts during this one, so I'm hoping that I've had the intelligence to go back and edit them out, because we had a few little moments where people walked into various rooms. So if there was any of that in the recording, I apologise. if not, it means I've gone out and edited it all out. But that was good. So what was that? We're on A, B, C, D, E. That was U. What comes after U? It's V.
V for virus. Well, S was taken up for security. Yeah, we're not going for medical stuff. It's not V for Veruca. It's Beaver virus. Anything security related we'll talk
Okay.
about in this one.
We will see you probably in 2 weeks' time. It was a nice chat. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed that. As always, if David and I missed anything out, please head over to the page on wpbuilds.com, search for episode number 249. You'll remember it's called U is for Undo, and leave us a comment there. Alternatively, head over to our Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, and you could join in the thread over there instead. We'd be most welcome to hear your comments, positive or negative. Just another quick reminder, the Page Builder Summit happening in October, the 18th to the 22nd. Head over to pagebuildersummit.com and get yourself signed up so that we can keep you informed as to what's happening, when it's happening, and when the speakers are presenting their talks and all that good stuff. It really is shaping up to be a good event. If you go to that page, scroll down, have a look at the speaker list, and I'm sure you'll be delighted to attend. Get yourself signed up, and if you're a sponsor or a person in the WordPress space who has a product or service and you'd like to reach out, well, admin@wpbuilds.com will get you into my inbox, and I will be right back with some more information. Okay, that's all we got for this week. I hope that you enjoyed it. Stay safe. See you next week. Cheesy music coming in. Bye-bye for now.